Okay, so we'll begin with introductions. We'll go around the table. Will, do you want to start?
Sure. Will Lyons, Unincorporated County Planning Department.
We'll go this way, I guess.
Yeah.
So Scott Orr, I work with Will. Chris Barney, SETA RCPA.
Hi, Emily Betts. I'm smart.
JP Harris with the Katati.
Amy Nicholson with Santa Rosa.
Dana Trey, SCTA RCPA.
Adam Garcia, SCTA RCPA.
Steph Britt, SCTA RCPA.
All right, and let's move to Zoom. Do we have any jurisdiction representatives? Doesn't look like it. So do we want to start on Zoom? Let's start with, oh, someone just popped up from City of Santa Rosa. Tarina, do you want to start?
Hello, I'm assuming this is introductions.
Yes.
I'm Tarina Wilson. I'm the City of Santa Rosa's transportation planner.
Okay, Alexander?
Alexander Oseguera, active transportation planner with the City of Santa Rosa.
Looks like Luke.
Yeah, good morning, Luke Lindenbush, Napa Sonoma Collaborative.
Let's see, Franny.
Hi, I'm Franny Ritchie. I work for Sam Schwartz and Associates, and we're working with a couple of municipalities on parking plans.
Tanya.
Hi, I'm Tanya Cordova. I'm the administrative analyst for the parking division in Santa Rosa.
Elliot.
I'm Tanya Narath with the SCTA and RCPA.
Thank you. And Elliot.
That's me. Elliot Pickett, City of Roder Park. Sorry, joining a couple minutes late.
No problem.
We also have Sydney.
Oh, and Sydney.
Sydney Mays from Sam Schwartz.
Okay. All right. All right, let's move on to the meeting notes from August 15th, 2024. Let's see, are there any changes to the minutes? Oh, yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, right. Yeah. Two, yeah.
And we have Elliot on
Zoom.
So yeah, we need 6, right?
Okay. So we'll just move that to the next.
So we'll move action.
Perfect.
The next meeting in Harry's order as a committee of the whole, if that's okay with those.
Yeah.
Right now.
Sounds great. Okay, then we can move on to adoption of the agenda for today's meeting. I have a motion and a second.
We actually can't take off.
Oh, we can't
action.
because of that.
Yeah.
That's true. Okay. All right. Then on to item 3. A smart rail update from Emily.
Hi. And I'm sorry I missed introductions. Would you mind telling me which jurisdictions?
Oh, sorry. I'm City of Healdsburg.
Healdsburg. Okay,
Yes.
great.
Healdsburg. Tahiti, Santa Rosa.
And County. Yep.
Okay, great. Yeah, nice to meet you. I have not usually this meeting in person. Okay, let me share my screen. Okay. Thinking about it. Hold on. So Chris asked me to come and do an update on all things smart, which is a lot of things. I have 20 minutes and I basically threw the kitchen sink in here. So I might cover a lot, but I can also focus on whatever you're most interested in. I don't know why it's not going. Here we go. Okay.
And Emily, I would say it was a request specifically from this committee. So I'm
Okay.
definitely interested, but
It's not just you personally.
Yeah.
Good to know. Okay. So yeah, I'm Emily Betts. I'm the planning manager for SMART. So we like to start all of our presentations with what we call the SMART house. this is something our board came up with a couple of years ago to align the strategic orientation for the organization. And we have our 4 pillars of the house, which are our focus areas: ridership, pathways, extensions, and freight. And I'll try to cover updates on all of those in this presentation. So we love this chart because every transit agency in the country has a ridership chart like this, but most are not exceeding their pre-COVID average. SMART was sort of just getting its momentum before the pandemic hit, which you can see this precipitous drop in ridership there. And these things popping up on my screen. I'm not seeing Emily's slides. Okay, not sure what that is. Okay, great. Since about, almost a year ago, we've been exceeding our pre-COVID average. We're the only transit agency in the Bay Area doing that. So it's been pretty exciting for SMART. Going to some, arrow not working. Here we go. Going to some ridership specifics. This is average weekday ridership. In September and October, we're running about 30% higher than last year, which is really great statistic in transit in general. So we're averaging about 3,600 people a day right now. This is monthly. Last month we carried 92,855. And that was a new record, and we're on track to hit another record for October. And then we also have counters on our pathway, which has been really interesting. We put those in a little over a year ago. So, 2 years ago now. You can see year over year on the slide. And, the SMART is a train and pathway system, which is pretty unique in the United States. And so we're working on trying to understand pathway users as our users too, as our riders, right? Transit agencies tend to focus a lot on the transit system riders, but the pathway users are also users of the system. We clearly invest a lot of money and effort into that project. So it's been interesting tracking that usage. And then you can see from the orange and the blue that it's almost evenly split between pedestrians and bicyclists on the pathway. I've got some more detailed data later in the presentation. Here's our annual ridership. Our goal for FY24 was to beat FY19, which was our highest year ever pre-pandemic. And we did that. We were 33% higher than FY23 and 19% 19. 18.4 million passenger miles. SMART has an average passenger trip length of 22 miles, which is really important to keep in mind the difference in the role that regional transit plays versus local transit. If you start looking at things like cost per rider, cost per hour and everything, and you compare a rail system to a bus system, the rail is always going to be far more. But if you start looking at cost per passenger mile, it's actually less, right? Because we're carrying people a lot further distance. And so there's just different roles that rail versus bus plays in the network. Here's a list of some things that we've done in the past few years that have led to that big spike in ridership that I showed at the beginning. We're running more service than ever before, more service than pre-pandemic, 42 trips a day. We're also running expanded weekend service, 16 trips a day. We reduced fares, we reduced the monthly pass, we made the parking free. We have been doing a ton of coordination with Golden Gate to try to improve the connections at Larkspur. We're coordinating on Giant service. We have a free field trip program. We ran that free field trip program for about 1.5 years, and then in April started doing free fares for seniors and youth, probably all aware of. And that's been a wildly successful program. We've seen a huge jump in seniors, especially during midday. We it's something like 35% boost just in midday trips from seniors. We've launched microtransit pilots. That's a little orange van up there. We've got one at Larkspur and one at the airport, Sonoma County Airport. And those are offering those local connections. And then, yeah, in August, we added 2 more weekday trips, filling in a commute hour that was missing, and also some more midday service. Coming soon. So at the end of this year, I think the headline is we're opening Petaluma North Station in December, just coming right up. And along with that, we're going to be opening a series of pathway segments between from Petaluma to Pingrove, and then from Rohnert Park to Santa Rosa. I mean, those are being paved as we speak, and they're basically open as completed. We'll have a ribbon cutting of some sort for all of that together probably in January. We're also paving a pass at McGinnis Parkway in San Rafael. Got a picture of that in a minute. And we are installing these beautiful pathway wayfinding signs. You can see the one on the right, up and down the pathway over the next 2 months. What we've found is that we've put, millions and millions of dollars into the pathway, but that people don't even know it's the smart pathway, right? I had a comment at a workshop I ran last week, where someone said, I didn't even know Smart had a pathway. So it's both a wayfinding effort, but also just a branding effort for Smart, so that people know that this is something we're delivering for the voters, right? So that's happening in the next few months. We're also putting real-time train information signs up on the platform starting next week, I think. Those are going to be really cool. So you don't have to get your smartphone out. You can stand there and it'll tell you when the train's coming. And then Windsor is expected to open spring 2025. So probably April. I got some pictures. Here's the new platform and canopy going in at Petaluma North. That was this week. Here's Windsor. I like this picture. They're putting in a pedestrian underpass to connect high school students there, and this was jointly funded with the city of Windsor. So Windsor's a 3-mile extension. We are building a parking lot that's going to be just south of the roundabout. So that's going to have around 60 spots, I believe. Construction began in 2020. We had to put it on hold due to RM3 litigation, and then it started again last year. And again, it's supposed to be opening this coming spring. Exciting. Some pictures of track being put in at the Windsor Depot. And then, just to speak to the importance of building out the system, we continue to advocate for the Healdsburg and Cloverdale extensions to be included in Plan Bay area. And it's just important to remember that SMART is designed to function as a completed system. So the projections that were originally included in our EIR and the ridership for the stations and all that stuff, right? You understand, as planners, it operates as a network, and some stations function as origins and some stations function as destinations. I think Windsor is going to be very, very busy when it opens. And then, Healdsburg will clearly be a big destination. Here's a little bit on the Healdsburg extension. So we have partial funding. We have 106 million, but we have a range of grant applications out for a range of funding, and we are looking to secure funding to build to the northern end of Healdsburg at this point, not just to the depot. So design has already started. Actually, just jumped right ahead of myself. Design has already started, and in February of this year, the City Council did select the depot site as the preferred location. There have been sort of ongoing discussions over the past few years about where to put the station, because that is still flexible. Let's see here. So this is the status of the Healdsburg extension. This just was presented to our board yesterday. It was tentatively added to Plan Bay area last Friday by the Planning Policy Advisory Committee, and they're taking it to the full commission on the 23rd. So that's a really big deal for SMART and for the North Bay. That's something that we've worked for a long time. And we have a series, and with the funding that we have with the 106 million, we are starting a new type of work called progressive design build, which was approved by the state a couple of years ago. And basically means you can build as you get the money. So we're going ahead and we're starting design. We've contracted with a special firm that they specialize in creative project delivery forms, such as this new progressive design build format. So work has commenced on Healdsburg, which is very exciting. And then we have 3 different grants in the pipeline, TIRCP grant, Solutions for Congested Corridors, and local partnership programs. So there's millions of dollars pending in those that we should find out about in the next year. All right, and then Cloverdale would be next up, and we are still actively advocating for Cloverdale to be added to Plan B area. So far, it is not in there. It would be an 18-mile extension of the rail and pathway. We would need additional vehicles.
This side is for sharpening, and this side is for polishing. Soak your whetstone in water for around 20 minutes. Then, mentally divide your blade into...
I love meeting.
I don't think that's me.
Sorry.
Yeah, I think I was just saying this would require more vehicles for us. So that's another issue is procuring rail vehicles. And I know you're also interested in the east-west extension. SMART does own the tracks to the east-west, known as the Brazos line. It's 46 miles and connects into Sassoon. There is active work going on this corridor. We've been participating in, all of the Highway 37 work, and we're SMART as part of the MOU to move that work forward. This rail extension as a passenger rail extension is included in the California State Rail Plan. So Caltrans is in favor, and they did submit this rail portion to the FRA for this program called the Corridor ID program. And so at this point, passenger rail on east-west is being led by Caltrans, not by SMART. And they're leading it in like an operator agnostic sort of way. And it may end up being a capital corridor extension versus being a SMART extension. So we'll see. But it is an active freight line. I think I have freight later in here. All right, pathway. So SMART and our partners have completed around 29 miles of pathway that are open to the public. We have 10 counters distributed throughout the system. We're counting around 95,000 people a month. 60,000 average over the year. And you can see these are the location of our counters, and you can see where the most activity is down in Larkspur at the part of Swallow. No, not the Presby Hall, whatever the name of that tunnel is down there right next to our Larkspur station. That is the busiest location. And then in Santa Rosa is the busiest Sonoma County location. Let's see here. And this just shows there's a really interesting parity between both bicycle and pedestrians, but also weekday versus weekend trips. People are using, and we've done time of day analyses as well. People are really using the path at all different times in different ways for different trip purposes based on our surveys we've done. We have 6.5 miles of pathway in design. I know these maps are impossible to read up on the screen, but the segments in Sonoma County are Main Street to Railroad Ave. So that's Pengrove to Runner Park. And then we completed design on 6th Street to downtown center. Okay, so sorry, duplication, but basically this is saying these are in design and not yet funded. So we have submitted a couple grant applications for that Pengrove to Runner Park section, but it's just a really difficult one to fund. There's a lot of environmental constraints there, and that makes the price tag very expensive, right? Which affects the cost benefit, but we are actively working to fund that one. Grant funding secured. All right, so we have 3 additional segments coming up with grant funding secured. We just were recommended for funding for this Hannah Ranch to Vintage Way section, which is a very short section down in Marin, but is important for their connectivity. And then we received grant funding for Girdville to Airport Road. And then also we have, I think it's AHSC funding for a small segment to connect the Joe Rodita Trail to West Third, Santa Rosa. And this is some details on that big grant that we just got. So this is the Guerneville Road to Sonoma County Airport section. We got 7 million miles for the Safe Streets and Roads for All program. It's 4.7 miles of pathway, and it's going to close a very large gap in the system. So that's very exciting. In construction, 9.5 miles. I mentioned this already. This is the South Point to Main Street between Petaluma and Pengrove, golf course to Bellevue, to Merritt Park and Santa Rosa, and then airport to Windsor as part of the Windsor extension. Those are all actively in construction and will be open in the next 6 months. And here's a pretty picture of the new pathway that we're opening down in Marin. This is McGinnis Parkway. Here's the Petaluma pathway being paved this past week. They love getting the train in the background. Let's see, here's Pengrove. They're building the retaining wall as it comes up to Main Street. And then just a word on freight operations. A lot of people don't know that SMART operates freight. We operate basically from Petaluma east on that Brazos line. So we run about twice a week. We have these 3 regular customers in Petaluma and delivered 558 rail cars in 2023. So to give you an idea of the scale of the operation. So those east-west tracks they're live, they're in service, they're just not suitable for passenger rail. All right, I wanted to mention that we're working on our strategic plan this year. This has been going on since January, and we're just starting to wrap it up and finalize the draft. And we held an in-person workshop a few weeks ago, and we'll be presenting the draft plan to our board in a couple weeks. And these are the goals that we included in our plan. So it's a 5-year time span for the strategic plan, and it's something that's required by our enabling legislation. Increase ridership to 5,000 a day, design and construct the pathway, complete the extensions to Cloverdale, and pursue project development of east-west alignment, and ensure long-term sustainability of freight. Here's where we are in our plan. We're just in the process of drafting the plan and taking it to the board. And that's all I got. So I know that was a lot of different things. I'm happy to answer any SMART questions.
Thanks, Emily. Does anybody have any questions?
You said there were areas where the counters were set up. Is that automatic counters or?
Yeah, there's a post with a sensor, and then there's a cut in the pavement, right? And so the difference between those types of counts and then enables them to differentiate between bikes and pedestrians. But yeah, they're permanent.
Yeah.
And we're actually putting more counters in as we install pathway segments.
You see SMART expanding its cargo on the Larkspur to Windsor line, I guess, that particular.
The freight service?
Yeah.
We'd like to. Yeah, we'd like to. It's been hard to find new freight customers. But I think the further north we go, the more opportunities will open up for freight business. But SMART is pretty rare in being the owner operator of freight and passenger rail. Usually it's separate and there's a conflict there, and that you're always having to negotiate with the freight operator. So that means that because we have control over it, we can schedule it whenever we want, right? We can schedule it in the middle of the night, so it's not conflicting with passenger rail service. Yeah, I don't know if I can answer that question. It has to do with like the class of the railway and the upgrades that have happened, but I think I would need an engineer to answer that one. Yeah.
I have a question
Yeah.
about Smart Connect. So
Yeah.
it's operating in Larkspur and Sonoma County Airport,
Mhm.
right? Has it been relatively successful? How's that being received so
Yeah.
far?
So airport has been running for about a year and a half. It's been slow on the uptake. It's growing. Every month is bigger than the last. And we did expand the service area recently to include the area, some of the Wiki Up area east of the highway and Sutter. Now, I haven't done any marketing yet because we've had some turnover with our marketing people, but I think as soon as people figure out that there's a connection to the Sutter Hospital, there will be a lot of demand there. I'd say it's just sort of ticking along. And what's nice to see about it, it's about half airport trips. And that's its main job, is to take people to the airport. But we're seeing a lot of other trips too, to like the Sonoma County Office of Education and the food bank. And there are a number of offices around there and people are starting to use it for their commutes, which is nice. The Larkspur shuttle is doing awesome. Yeah, it's doing really great. We're only running it Thursday through Sunday right now. It's a sort of an experiment targeted at tourism, but if we start getting more requests for 7 days a week, then we'll expand it.
Where does the Larkspur shuttle run?
Well, its main job is to go down to the ferry. You know, it's only a 10-minute walk, but there's a lot of people who just can't make that walk.
Yeah, no, I noticed it's kind of a long walk.
Yeah, you know, for limited mobility, it's a challenge, right? And we have many people complaining over the years saying, I just can't do this, so I can't take the ferry.
Yeah.
So we try to prioritize for those people. It's only a 10-passenger van, right? So you have 150 people get off the train to go to the Giants game. We really need people to use the van who really need it, and we need everyone else to walk. So it's not like a catch-all, but it is mainly doing that. But it also, I mean, there's a zone. It's working like microtransit, so it'll take you anywhere in that Larkspur Landing area. And on the weekends, we have it set up to take people down to the Corte Madera Mall as well. People use it for that, which is cool.
Have you explored any opportunity with Santa Rosa Junior College for setting up maybe a potential smart connects, even for North Petaluma Station to the Petaluma campus, but just seems like it's a back and forth trip that could benefit from that regional local last
Yeah.
mile connection.
Definitely. Yeah, I've talked to Deb several times about that. I mean, because Petaluma Transit is now running their own microtransit system in Petaluma called Luma Go, and it just started at the downtown station. I think that's probably the path it will take, is for them to just add a second shuttle at Petaluma North, so that it's all one system there within Petaluma. But I agree, that would be a perfect use of a shuttle between SRJC and Petaluma North. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Emily. It's all really exciting.
Thank you.
Oh. Are there any hands raised?
I had one quick question on the counters. Do they display in real time or near real time the count to like cyclists or pedestrians walking by on the path?
They can, yes, they can. You can buy those signs that basically they're like the highway signs, right? If you're going 26 miles an hour, right? So they reflect back to people, and they can be really nice, I think, and affirming of people, right? You know, like one more bicycle trip. We don't have those, but yes, they have that capability. Yeah.
All right, anyone else on Zoom? Okay. All right, thanks, Emily.
Thanks.
All right, moving on to item 4, introduction to the downtown Santa Rosa parking curb management and access plan by Sydney Maves with Sam Schwartz.
Okay, can you all see my screen? Can you see the right screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. And then I'll just hope that it stays on the right screen when I go full screen, because sometimes that happens. Okay, so that was so interesting. We wanted to talk to you a little bit about the downtown Santa Rosa parking, curb management, and access plan, both in the interest of just letting you know that it's going on and hopefully getting a little bit of feedback about best practices if you have them, or sort of hearing your 2 cents. So our agenda very quickly is we want to walk you through the scope and purpose of study, let you know where we are with the existing conditions. We also did a survey that had like a banner response, and finally talk a little bit about parking challenges. Is there background noise? Is my audio okay?
It's good. Yeah. Sounds
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
your audio is good.
Okay, we've got dueling presentations happening here. So the scope and purpose is to develop a plan that provides a path for Santa Rosa Parking Services to balance the budget to remain cash neutral. So they are enterprise funded, and we want to keep that top of mind as we're thinking about how we're going to make recommendations to kind of create a sustainable and manageable parking system on top of what they already have. Tanya, you're here as our sort of customer representative too. So if you feel like we're getting anything wrong or misrepresenting things, feel free to jump in as I'm going along. They want to maintain a high level of customer service and also support the city's larger economic development and sustainability goals. So to start with, we took a look at what is happening sort of more regionally. Replica is a tool that it's an Alphabet product, so it's a Google spinoff that uses mobile phone data to track commute journeys and journeys writ large. So this gives you a sense of Santa Rosa is that teeny tiny hot pink dot in the center, and you can see where people are coming from. This shows origins. We also looked at Napa and downtown Petaluma just to give you some kind of comparison in terms of what the commute shed or what the travel shed is for these three communities. And then we looked at downtown Santa Rosa on-street parking utilization. So Santa Rosa has a product already, a vendor called Turnstone, that is mapping all of the on-street and surface parking lots that are paid. So right now they have paid parking during the day, and then during evening and weekends, it's free. And so this tracks all of the payment that is being received in these colored areas. There's a big shopping mall right here that's conspicuously carved out from the rest of the downtown, and that's why that is the way it is. And what we found is that central value, so the area that is not the very core of downtown, but is the area around it, is 19% occupied. The central premium area is about 70% occupied, and that's in aggregate. So for the paid portion. So there are times of day when it's very, very full, and there are times of days when it's not. Railroad Square value, which is near the SMART station on the left of your screen there, is 30% occupied, and then the premium lots are 56% occupied. When we look at lot and garage, this is lot average utilization summary, we see kind of a similar story. There's low utilization in the value areas and then slightly higher utilization in the premium areas, but still far from 100%. And some of this is because this is an aggregate, so it varies hour to hour. But we are hearing from vendors and from business owners that parking is a problem. And so we're working to kind of square perception that parking is rammed all the time with our observations and with the collected data that shows that actually there's a discrepancy or there's some opportunities to optimize, let's say. I'll hand it over to Sydney to talk about the survey results.
Thanks, Fernie. So as Fernie mentioned, we ran a visitor survey that was open for a number of weeks, closed sometime, I believe, in mid-September. It was super successful with over 1,500 completed responses. So we just wanted to showcase a few of our key findings from that surveying effort. So the first question here is, how important are each of the following potential enhancements for downtown Santa Rosa? And I wanted to highlight the top priority items and low priority items that were identified through that surveying effort. So when we combined the responses for very and extremely important, the most valued enhancements were firstly, improved cleanliness and maintenance, enhanced safety and security, providing a better parking experience, building out more green spaces and parks, and including more bike and pedestrian enhancements. Some of the lower priority items on the list were optimized curb space, EV charging stations, wayfinding signage, and improved technology and connectivity. And some of that might just be because the users are, some of these items might not be applicable to those users. For example, if you don't have an EV vehicle, EV charging is less applicable. So overall, we saw that there was less demand for tech-driven or specialized infrastructure changes, highlighting a preference for more immediate and visible enhancements in the area, in the downtown area. Next slide. We wanted to highlight how satisfied folks are with different aspects of parking downtown. So respondents are least satisfied with the price, availability of parking spaces, and the safety and security of parking downtown, and more satisfied with the availability of sorry, never mind. I'll just leave it there for that one. Next slide. When asked what are your main priorities when it comes to parking, we found that distance to their destination is the most important factor, which is followed closely by the availability of parking spaces. Safety and security, as well as the pricing of parking, was also named as a top priority. Key takeaways here are that this survey data revealed the residents and visitors both prioritize improvements related to cleanliness, safety, and parking availability. Parking remains a significant issue on people's minds, with respondents prioritizing proximity and availability of parking. And there may also be a need to raise awareness about like parking features such as paying on a mobile phone and other parking facilities nearby. Next slide. So we just wanted to highlight a few of the parking challenges that were identified through conversations with the city. So firstly, there's a lack of garage utilization. So there's incentives to park in the garages, for example, lower per hour rates, but it's been a challenge moving people from the streets into the garages. As Franny mentioned, there's also a large mall parking facility. This is privately owned and bisects the downtown area, which creates a walkability barrier and challenge. There's also a concern that folks may be parking in the mall facilities and working downtown or visiting other businesses in the area. The city has the ability to dynamically price parking, but they have never employed that. Enforcement is also a challenge with limited resources and staffing to support that. Community members also have safety concerns for both on and off-street parking facilities. And on the back end, there's limited integration capabilities through Skid Data and Turnstone, the other provider. And then fee management challenges are also present. And then most recently, we've also held a focus group with some key employers in the downtown area, and we wanted to highlight some of their key concerns and challenges. Firstly, there's a need for public education materials and additional marketing of parking permits and where parking is available downtown. Business owners also mentioned that there's a need for more short-term parking spaces, especially in the downtown core, or the premium parking areas, so that folks can more easily, go into a cafe and grab a quick coffee and not have to circle the block for parking. There's also a need for more all-day long-term parking, both for employees and smart rail users. And there's a desire to rationalize the parking costs, both across hourly parking and more long-term parking and permitting costs. Just wanted to also highlight that the data we shared on the previous slides is also just showing data for when data is available. So we are limited to not having information on during the evening hours and on weekends.
Can I just clarify that we do
or
have, sorry, we do have paid parking on Saturdays. So
Saturday.
it's not the
Sorry.
whole weekend. It's just Sunday that it's free.
Thanks, Tanya. Any questions?
I do have a question. On your public survey, it was shown that bike and ped improvements are favored and something like curb management is not favored as much. Could that result in some sort of recommendation from your group that in certain areas curb parking could be removed in favor of like protected bike lanes? Because that's something that our department does work on. And we hear a ton of comments from folks that they don't feel safe riding downtown on their bikes.
I think potentially we're really focused on optimizing parking specifically. So I don't think we're planning on making a recommendation about the interaction of parking and bike lanes, but I think it's definitely something we want to keep in mind when we're looking at where the occupancy actually is and how that might interact with a larger mobility system downtown.
Got it.
And I guess to that point, also, one of the things that surprised all of us was how quickly parking drops off. I mean, it makes intuitive sense, but the place where people are having trouble parking and where they're looking to park is very tight to the downtown core. And so if you go a block or two off, not only is there parking availability, but there may be an opportunity to look at bike lanes or bicycle infrastructure there.
Question. So about the downtown mall parking, you know, are there any opportunities to kind of work with them to, you know, look at the entire downtown parking as a system? You know, I know that you did mention that's a big gap, and I'm just wondering how cooperative they may have been in the past on kind of coordinating.
Yeah, Tanya can speak to this a little more as well, but they've been a really great partner in the process. They've given us rough estimates about how I don't think they have clear data, but they've given us estimates about how occupied they think different segments of the parking lot are, parking structures. And they've worked with us to drive people to the survey. And they've also told us about some of the development plans that they're working on in association with the mall and the associated parking, along with some of their visitor projections. So we've got a pretty clear notion of what they think is happening at the garage. And I think the city is in pretty regular conversation with them about making sure that there's at least information exchange, if not actual shared parking agreements.
Yeah, I just want to echo that, you know, they are a great partner with us, and we do talk with them quite a bit. One thing that they have been focused on over the last few months is removing some of the parking congestion that they were experiencing from downtown employees that were using their space and not utilizing that, who don't work at the mall, and trying to get those parkers back into other areas of that are more appropriate for them. They do really see their parking as a mall use, and as they're developing, it's been really important for them, and trying to find new anchors and things like that. It's been really important for them to try to make sure that their space is being utilized the way that it's intended to be used. So but I'm definitely working with them as much as we can.
Yeah, just to build off of that, one thing that they said when we had a conversation with them is that they used to charge for parking and then it became free. I believe it was right before the pandemic, so unassociated with the pandemic, but it's been free since. They do anticipate that in the long arc of their future development, they will go back to a paid condition, but since it's private and it's free, there's been a tension between the free parking and the city parking, which is paid.
Like we have a hand raised on Zoom. Alexander, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was just curious if you have tried to make like the garages and your parking lots a little bit more attractive by maybe adding art, at least in the garages. I know you've done some art in the parking lots, but like just finding a way to attract people to those spots, because, you know, in other cities you can see that people use parking garages just fine, and the on-street parking is, you know, there's just not enough of it, right? So then people go to a centralized location to find their parking, and it just seems like an easier way to get around. Um, Obviously our parking garages are cheaper, and so that's an incentive, but is there any other like signage or beautification of some sort that you could make the garages a little bit more attractive so people go there?
Yeah, I would push back on that a little. I think driving people to parking, incentivizing people to park in structures is a perennial problem, not just in Santa Rosa, but in all of the communities that we work with. We routinely see on-street parking oversubscribed with available garage parking, sometimes immediately next door. So I think that this is very much an urban planning challenge. That said, Tanya, I'll hand it over to you, but I do hear plans or have heard plans to work on beautification of the parking structure, and I think it's an ongoing concern.
Yes, definitely. One of the things that we are working on right now are some art projects. We have some happening in our Fifth Street garage currently with a community of of children and families that have disabilities. We're really excited about that art project that's going. We also have some things that we're working on with several other groups downtown. It is one of our focuses in trying to make sure that the garages are safe. All of that, of course, comes down to funding and trying to secure funds and just making sure that our facilities are maintained and clean and things like that. So we're trying to weigh and balance all of that.
You wanna go,
Yeah, I'll jump in. Next question. So in the presentation, you said you looked at Santa Rosa, Napa, and Petaluma. Is any of your analysis for kind of where the parking is popular and utilized in Santa Rosa based on a comparison of paid versus unpaid, like using Petaluma as an example where, you know, similar, there's limited street parking, there's garages, but they don't have the pay dynamic. Is that informing the Santa Rosa recommendations at all?
Sorry, do you mean like the overall occupancy of Santa Rosa relative to the overall occupancy of Petaluma?
Well, specifically with the garages. So, you know, Santa Rosa, you pay on the street and you pay in the garages. Petaluma, you don't pay for either. Do they have similar garage usage challenges in Petaluma? Or, you know, because you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah, they do. Actually, it's a very similar conversation, and it's particularly true on evenings and on weekend evenings. The challenge is that there's one garage in particular of two. We're also working in Petaluma, so I have a ready answer. I'm glad you chose that as your specific example. But there are two garages. One in particular is highlighted as a safety concern, despite being there's availability, but people are citing concerns about walking to and through the parking structure late at night, particularly employees or like restaurant and bar staff. So that's one concern. And similarly, we are seeing like a very tight, high amount of demand in the downtown core of Petaluma, even while the structures do remain undersubscribed.
Thanks.
We have one more question in here. David, did you?
Yeah, I was just curious if, there's any part of this process is gonna include like real-time signage saying how many parking spaces are available, because it seems like there's this real perception that there's not enough parking or not close enough parking in downtown Santa Rosa, where there's actually a lot in the garages, and that could help to drive people to the garages.
Yeah, it's definitely something we're interested in considering. It's something we recommend a lot. The plan itself, like the extent to which you can get detailed has been described to me as like how long is a piece of string. But I think we want to think about what level of detail is appropriate and what whether a district parking strategy where, as you're entering the downtown, you see signage about what's available where, whether that's like what's the right level of granular detail.
And then we have Elliot from Internet Park that has a question as well on Zoom.
Hello, thank you. I just was wondering if there is more information on what kind of the next steps are project-wide in terms of is there a report coming out where will more data be available? Kind of where do we go from here?
Yeah, so we're planning on finishing up the project in by May of next year. We're moving now into the recommendations phase, and I think it's kind of ultimately up to the city of Santa Rosa whether or not they want to make the results public, because they are ultimately going to be the keeper of the recommendations. So Tanya, I guess I'll punt
Yeah.
that to you.
Yeah, no, we definitely want to share the results, and we want to be, you know, responsive to what the community needs. You know, our goals are to try to balance the needs of the community, and like I think Franny said at the very beginning, make sure that parking is sustainable. We are an enterprise funded you know, division here in Santa Rosa, and so we don't have any way to raise funds for our parking facilities other than through fees, and so we need to balance that, and we'll be presenting the information to our city council, to all of our stakeholders, and sharing it widely with the public, with the recommendations that they, you know, will take into consideration all the recommendations they're giving, and weigh those with our needs, and try to come up with, you know, the best plan that we can for all the development goals that are happening in Santa Rosa as well.
And I will just add that we are working on a parking model currently to analyze how future development in downtown Santa Rosa is likely to impact the parking supply based on a number of assumptions. And so that will be used to also inform the recommendations that we put forward.
Thanks, Sydney. Yeah, that's a big part of everything too. Thank you.
And Alexander, you have another question?
Yeah, thanks. Just a silly idea, but would we ever consider like adding vending inside those unused parking spaces, right? So like being able to use that space in a creative way to bring vendors out and around parking lots, parking structures, maybe even a permanent way in the parking structures. I don't know. It's just came to mind and I thought I'd bring it to the group.
Love that idea. We should talk more about it.
I wanted to add, you mentioned the demand for smart parking. That's definitely something I hear all the time. People tell me it's impossible for me to take smart because there's nowhere to park. I know we worked with the city about a year ago to set up a discounted monthly pass parking agreement for people. I think they maybe have to go into the city office and bring proof of Clipper Pass or something. It's probably a little cumbersome for people who just want to take the train every now and then, right? And for them to have to do the research. So I guess my comment is, we would love to work with you on this. If you can identify a lot that is walking distance to the station where you are able to offer daily parking rate, then we can also advertise that to our riders.
Yeah, definitely. We have lot 1314 under the freeway. It is within 2 blocks of the Smart Station in Railroad Square. It is the most underutilized lot that we have. There are always spaces available in that lot, and we really try to we have a commuter permit available for the commuters. And definitely when all of the information comes back from Sam Schwartz, we will look at different rates that we can provide. And we're looking at different rates for all kinds of different situations. So that's definitely one that's on the table.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you, Franny, Sydney, Tanya. Moving on to item 5, a regional update, TOC policy and climate program implementation grants from Ada Chan.
Great. Should I share slides or do you have them, Drew?
Want me to share? I can just a moment. I'm excited to Adobe.
I'm not hearing Drew.
Hang on. Hi, Ada. I need to re-sign into Adobe, so give me another second and I can share it for you.
Okay.
Drew, do you want, I have them here. Do you want me to bring those up or you're beating me? Oh, you got it. Okay.
Great. Thank you so much, Drew. So this was presented by Kruti to the CTA planning directors, and wanted to share with you just a really high kind of overview of our recent call for projects. Next slide. We have two kind of areas of funding right now, and I think a lot of time has been spent talking about the transit-oriented communities funding. There's two kind of, or four buckets in there of planning money, but they are focused on TOCs. So only jurisdictions with TOCs or willing jurisdictions that want to opt into the TOC policy are eligible for those grants. I know a lot of jurisdictions, so PDAs and TOCs may overlap, but they're, if you're a PDA alone and not a TOC, you would not be eligible unless you wanted to opt into those policies. And then we have capital funding for implementation of climate program projects, which is eligible to all beyond PDAs and TOCs. Next slide. So there's 20 million for planning. These are kind of falling into the four areas of the TOC policy, which is kind of rezoning for density, area plans and things like that, that help with the rezoning for residential and commercial densities. There are the housing policies. There's the four buckets or the three buckets of housing policies that jurisdictions need to have. I think 2 policies in each category. When I looked at all of the Sonoma County jurisdictions, it looks like most of you do have some version of these policies. But there is an opportunity to apply to that. And then parking planning as Santa Rosa ahead of the curve there. And then access, circulation and station area access planning. So again, the eligible applicants must have at least one TOC area or opting into the TOC policy. And the opting into the TOC policy is not like one area of policy, it's actually to the whole program. Next slide. So the way we're going to evaluate applications, I think we had about 150 participants at the webinar. So I don't think we're going to be undersubscribed. We'll be looking at level of impact of the proposed work, alignment with the TOC program goals and Plan Bay Area 2050. So a PDA that's a TOC would be more competitive, for example, than a TOC alone, because a city has already demonstrated its commitment to growth. And we would be helping kind of create more synergy there. Alignment with other MTC programs. So there's the priority sites, the wayfinding pilot program, equity priority communities. So all of those would be kind of ways the scoring will be weighted towards jurisdictions that have made those kind of, or addressing those policies and programs that we have. And then readiness to complete the work. So next slide. So we announced the call for applications on September 30th. We did a couple information sessions. So they're recorded. I think I sent all of you that had a TOC kind of a link to a set of resources related to the program. There's a commission, we're going to commission in February. So on a timing basis, just to understand how the funding will flow, right? And then we expect that projects, or we'll be able to kind of get into contract and get things out, depending on where you are in March, let's say spring of 2025. Next slide. I think that's it. So there's the website. I think all of you who gotten kind of links to that. Really wanted to emphasize that there's also the capital program for those of you that may be in a different place, because I know we've been spending a lot of time talking, or at least I have, because it's my program area, talking about the planning funding. So wanting to make sure no one missed the other opportunity. And welcome to ask me any questions. Thank you, Drew.
Thanks, Ada. Does anybody have any questions?
I guess, Chris, yeah.
Yeah, so Ada, I was able to at least log into part of one of the workshops, and it sounds like there are some ways to streamline contracting, and MTC and ABAG may be able to kind of bear the burden of some of that, and do the contracting and then set the contractors or consultants loose. Can you comment?
Yeah, so that's we're arm wrestling internally for grants under 350,000. So the planning grants are 350 to 1.2, and for those the $350,000 grants and maybe a little bit more, we're debating whether we can do the procurement for people So that, so the big challenge for everyone is that all of this funding is subject to federal requirements. And so the program, which is the DBE, the estimated costs and things like that, which is really burdensome. So as we're doing office hours with people, we're actually asking what is their preference. We're debating going out and procuring like a bench that we can assign to people for smaller, like just rezoning or things like that. So that's one of the questions at hand is that useful? Is that what you would like? And we're also trying to negotiate internally, like what is the process if you already have a consultant because you're doing other work like your general plan update or something and you just want to fold this in. So we are really trying to find a way to streamline things. For the larger planning grants, which are 1.2 million, that will not be the case. We will just hand the grant over directly to the jurisdictions. With the housing policy grants, I'm not sure that that's as relevant to all of you because it looks like most of Sonoma County has the policies necessary, but that's an area where we could do the procurement, or I think it's not that we need to do the procurement. We're actually giving $350,000 per grant, and it doesn't have the federal requirements, so that's a different kind of color of money. And then with the parking and the circulation grants, those are we already have the consultants and we have a pre-designated scope of work. And so you could just say, oh, we only need this much of the scope of work, right? I mean, that could get worked out in your work with Kruti and Joel, and they will assign a consultant to do the work. So all of that's been pre-negotiated in some ways. Was that helpful?
Yeah, thank you.
All right, anybody else? Okay.
Yes. So just one thing, really, if you guys are thinking about it or have doubts, I really encourage you just to schedule office hours, and just talk to us, and like we'll help think through what's the best strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Ada. All right, moving on to item 6, the countywide active transportation plan from Dana.
Great, thank you. So this is just a quick update and announcement. We have published draft active transportation plans for the countywide plan, and also for the cities of Cloverdale, Healdsburg, Rohnert Park, Sebastopol, and Sonoma. And the unincorporated counties draft active transportation plan is coming soon. Those plans will be out for public review through the end of November, after which the local plans will be adopted locally and the countywide plan adopted by the SETA board. So just a kind of brief overview on the structure. The countywide active transportation plan is an update to the 2014 countywide bicycle pedestrian master plan. And it follows the same structure as that plan, where it's sort of acts as an umbrella, volume 1, and then volume 2 is all the local jurisdiction plans. Those local jurisdiction plans are both part of the countywide plan, but also standalone plans and adopted locally. So those are all available for review. There's a link in the agenda packet to the project webpage where they're available. We're taking each local plan to the jurisdiction's respective bicycle and pedestrian advisory board, which is often the planning commission, as well as to the city councils, and then the finals will be adopted this winter. And then, yeah, I just wanted to note that if you're really interested in the countywide piece and want to hear more about it, we will be doing a full presentation on it at the countywide bicycle and pedestrian advisory committee next Tuesday. And happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Questions for Dana? I know we're excited to take our ATP at the first meeting in November.
Great.
Yep.
I will also just note that in the countywide plan structure, the intention is to be able to incorporate the local plans for Santa Rosa, Petaluma, and Windsor, which are being developed independently of this process. Once those are adopted, through an administrative process into the countywide plan. And that allows us the ability to have a countywide project list and maintain countywide map.
Thank you. Anybody on Zoom or in here? Okay, let's move on to item 7. So it looks like it's the comprehensive transportation plan. 10.1 is the CTP progress report from Adam.
Thank you. All right, so good morning, everyone. As part of the comprehensive transportation plan, one of the really important things is to just take a quick backcast on the past few years and say, well, how well have we been doing in terms of our transportation system? So we break it down into a couple of different categories. System condition and safety, how efficient is it to travel around the county? Transit use and active transportation, and then equity in the environment. So we'll be going over just a few of these different measures. Definitely welcome your feedback on these and other data sources, these are the best ones to include. So for pavement, for the system condition and safety, we are looking at pavement condition index, collision rates for bicyclists and pedestrians specifically, and then transit vehicle revenue hours. So the pavement condition index is a way just for engineers to go out and look at the city streets and say, how well are they paved? Where are the potholes? What's the condition? Overall, looking over the past few years, Sonoma County on average has been steadily going up. So that's definitely great for those both biking and driving around, just to have smoother streets. Looking more specifically at the cities, the last year, current year 2023 is the one that's labeled on the chart, that you can see the individual rise mostly. A few cities are going down a little bit, but you can see that generally most cities are on the increase in terms of their smoothness and drivability of roads. In terms of per capita crashes for bicyclists, pedestrians, this is also Sonoma countywide. And since the pandemic, there's been a notable drop. We've also had slow increase in terms of safety projects as well going in. So there's been a small decrease in that from 5.7 crashes per 10,000 people in 2019 to about 3.8 this last year. Apologize for the readability of that map. It's a little far out, but you can essentially see this is looking at the crash density for pedestrians and bicyclists through the study periods that we're looking at 2019. Primarily in those downtown areas, but you can see hotspots in Verneville, the Sonoma Valley as well, that are outside of our cities. Here's looking at the transit vehicle revenue hours. So these are broken out specifically for Sonoma County, looking at just the routes for Golden Gate Transit and SMART, I guess, for all of it, pass through Sonoma County. So this is looking essentially at how many hours the transit vehicles are out on the road or the rail. You can see from the pandemic there was a notable dip, and there's been a gradual increase since the pandemic, but still not at full levels since FY. Now looking at travel efficiency, pretty straightforward, just looking at average trip length and travel delay. In terms of average trip length, Cloverdale's the highest limited and isolated area. Oh, I know, but whoops, sorry, there we go.
Yeah.
It's flashing right now. Let's go.
We got it.
Oh, wait, no, we just connected. All right.
Oh,
So we get. So Cloverdale being the highest at almost 14 miles per trip. I'm sorry, this is in terms of miles. While Cotati, Santa Rosa, Sebastopol, and City of Sonoma are close to the lowest in terms of average trip length. For the delay that we have to go through in driving, the best measure might be for the US 101. That's something we're all familiar with. According to the national data, there's been a 9% decrease in the congestion level along 101 throughout Sonoma County from 2019 to 2023. We haven't updated yet the 2023 Sonoma County transportation model, but you can get a sense from that the number of vehicle hours and person hours of delay. And the map also shows a lot of those hot spots as well too. A lot of them being in the county lands, 37 along our different highways. But if you notably kind of going through downtown Petaluma and Sebastopol, and parts of Santa Rosa show higher congestion, person hours of delay as well. For transit use and active transportation, this is the means of transportation to work from 2019 to the most recent data for 2022. We see that there's actually been an increase, as we all know, in work from home, where now that's actually a greater share than that of carpooling. Driving alone still dominates, but has overall declined since 2019. Zooming down on those tiny little lines down there, we get to see bicycle, bus, taxi cab, motorcycle, other means, train, and walking. Yeah, an increase in train ridership, as we've talked about, and an increase in that kind of other general category, taxi, motorcycle, etc. But other forms have declined, bicycling to work and bus and walking. Here we're looking at the miles of bicycle facilities from 2019 to 2023. For class 1, that's the darkest one, went from 93 to 241. So those are all protected lanes. The other one, class 4, I think we added about 4 miles, our first ones. Those are a new type of protected bike lane. But otherwise, the predominantly class 2 bike lanes are what we most see around the county and had the greatest increase. Switching over to transit, here's a look at passengers. And again, this is also cut out for just routes that serve Sonoma County. So it's ranked with the greatest number at the top, the lowest at the bottom. So we can see Santa Rosa City Bus continuing to carry the most people in the county on county routes, while down below Golden Gate Transit has declined from a little over 1 million to a little under 500,000 over the course of these years. Another way to look at this is the passengers per revenue hours. So essentially an efficiency metric in some ways of how many people are you moving on your routes. And here's a story showing SMART as having the highest passengers per revenue hours, with Santa Rosa City Bus close behind as well. And lastly, equity and drive and the environment. We can look at driving costs. This is from AAA, depending on how many miles you drive your car, 10, 15, or 20,000 miles. There's different costs. So we see there's been an increase for actually those lower mileage costs over the last few years. But almost all costs have increased since 2019. And VMT has also declined since the pandemic. The VMT per capita and VMT per job track pretty closely with overall VMT, with just a slight increase since 2020, since our lowest amount, obviously as a result of the pandemic, but not quite as increased, just a little bit since the 2020 year. And then lastly, for in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, the familiar story is that transportation is the dominant source of emissions, with the other sectors mostly tracking pretty consistently over the before and after the pandemic. And with that, I'll stop there and see if there's any questions.
Questions on Zoom? Okay.
All right.
All right. And then we're going to hear about the CTP project list and outreach and engagement from Chris.
Yeah, so this will be just a really brief update as well. So we have a few minutes for roundtable updates. But we're actually updating the comprehensive transportation plan project list right now. We're doing that in 2 phases. So we're working with local jurisdictions to update existing projects in the CTP right now through the end of the month. So we have worksheets out to your colleagues in Public Works and also in the transit providers to review projects that are already on the books in the adopted plan. So we're hoping to get updates for those projects back by the end of the month. And then next Thursday at our technical advisory committee, we're going to be opening the call for new projects to be submitted to the CTP. So we'll have an online form that folks can use to add new project submissions for inclusion in the CTP. So it's important for a number of reasons. We use that list of projects to analyze future conditions. So that's one piece of it. But including projects in our comprehensive transportation plan kind of tease them up for funding opportunities and for trickling up to the regional transportation plan as well, which opens up other buckets of funding. So yeah, so that'll be going on through the end of this year. Once we get all that information back, we'll compile that and take the draft list of projects out to everyone early next year, and then take it to our board probably in February, March next year. So that's the timeline for projects. On outreach and engagement, we have a few things going on. We have a survey online right now. I believe we included the flyer in the agenda packet. So there's a QR code there. It's a 5 to 10 minute survey gathering information on perceptions and issues people are experiencing in transportation in Sonoma County and what priorities are. So we'll be keeping that open for the next probably 8 or 9 months through next summer. So if you'd like to include that in your newsletters or promote that, that'd be great. I think we have some posters on Smart right now too. Yeah. So thank you for that. So we've seen an uptick in survey responses since that. So really appreciate that. And then next Tuesday, we're doing a virtual town hall meeting at 6 to 7:30. So we'll have some presentations, some interactive surveys. So we really like the Smart online town hall surveys. So
with the Mentimeter?
Yeah.
Are you going to use that?
We're going to use Zoom surveys. So,
oh, you are?
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's going to be next Tuesday from 6 to 7:30. We also included a flyer for that in the agenda packet. So we'll also record that. So that'll be an online resource kind of walking through what the CTP is. We'll include a discussion of those performance measures and progress that Adam went through and just gather information and get the word out for the CTP. So, and then we'll be continuing to schedule different, outreach events. So if you have any meetings or events going on that you think it would be useful for us to attend, please let us know. We can come table or present on the CTP. So we'd love to do that and get out. So I think that's it. We'll have more updates as we continue to work on this. So that's where we're at right now.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Any questions for Chris? Okay, all right, on to item 8, the Sonoma County travel model and the status of land use update with that.
Yeah, thank you again. So just, I'll make this real brief. We'll be reaching out to all the jurisdictions over the next month or so and setting up meetings to just review our existing land use totals, making sure those are accurate for our 2023 baseline. We'll also be reviewing what the travel model network looks like as well to see if we should be making any updates. There's opportunities to adjust your traffic analysis zones as well to make sure that we're dialed in and getting the right level of data. So those are going to be, expect to hear from me, in the next month or so. And we'll be setting up those meetings with maps, tables. Hopefully, if it's helpful to have a sit down, we're happy to come to you as well too. And that's it.
Thank you. Okay, now on to standing updates. Let's start with the jurisdictions here in the room and then we'll move over to Zoom. Does the county want to start?
Sure. Big news is general plan is ramping up. I think largely focusing on outreach. It's going to start ramping up soon. So maybe that's some opportunity for collaboration on these events. So we don't want to contribute to outreach fatigue that's going on. Big news are that our large housing projects are mostly still stationary, waiting to be get complete applications in. For your modeling and just knowledge, SCC has added more units, so we're up to 960, I believe. So other than that, things are pretty stable. Just plugging away, getting ready to ramp up the general plan.
And one thing I'd add on the general plan, I think one thing that we communicated to our board this last Tuesday is, everyone who lives in a city in Sonoma County lives in Sonoma County, and the general plan is going to apply to them. So we're really trying to do more than prior general plans in terms of doing, outreach to people that live in the cities as well. If you live in Sebastopol, you probably like being close to the coast, which is part of the county's general plan. So just looking to have, a bit more of a two-way conversation as part of our general plan this time around with all of you.
That's great. Thank you. Katati, you want to go?
Not a whole lot going on in Cotati. I guess his newest thing is bike share. The Redwood bike share is operating in Cotati now. So that's great. It just started a couple days ago, so I haven't yet to try it out, but I'm excited to get on the pathway. And anyway, that's it right now. Otherwise, projects are moving along, nothing in the ground yet. Hotels going up. Otherwise, pretty quiet.
Awesome. Amy, do you have anything for Santa Rosa?
There's a lot happening. On the policy side, we're actually holding our first set of community workshops for the South Santa Rosa specific plan tonight, tomorrow, and Saturday. We're kind of finishing up with our general plan update. So our EIR is currently out for public review. And we're going to the Planning Commission for that public hearing next month. There's a lot happening kind of construction wise. There's been a lot kind of up in the air for a while now, but there's been some good progress on like that 420 Mendocino project that you probably see. It's 8 stories. And yeah, there's a big project many of you have probably heard about on Lance Drive, which is near in the North Station. So that's like, I think around 700 units. So that's kind of finishing its review. So I think hopefully end of the year, early next year, that will be approved as well. So.
All right, thank you. Let's see, what jurisdictions do we have on Zoom? I know we have Rohnert Park. Elliot, do you want to go?
Yeah, thank you. Kind of starting on the plan and policy level, we have our active transportation plan coming out November for public review, probably the local hazard mitigation plan coming out around the same time. General plan, we're still working on some last tweaks and fixes to the modeling numbers for the EIR before that comes out. and working on edits on the housing element code implementation package that, you know, should also be coming forward within the next couple months. Project-wise for the big areas, the Vast Oak area, which is most of the university districts, we are going through acceptances and a lot of project closeout there. The Southeast has started their phase 4. Sonoma Village has their first set of occupancies and is working on tentative map for their next phase. Those kind of the big development areas. And then just an FYI, we did just lose our PIO and comms person to another organization who is on this Zoom and very lucky. So if you know who you are, be blessed that you have her. But we may have some kind of outreach challenges and website update challenges that we're working through as we're between somebody in that position. Thank you.
Thanks, Elliot. And then we have Jacob from City of Sonoma.
So Jacob is new at the City of Sonoma. So Jacob, we have an opportunity to provide updates on planning activities within your jurisdiction. So yeah, so go ahead and chime in if you want. If not, we'll catch you at another meeting, I'm sure.
All right. And then I can provide a brief update on the city of Healdsburg. I don't really have anything from new since the last meeting. We will be taking the ATP forward on 11/12. So that'll be going to Planning Commission. We just approved a new car wash. That's exciting. And then just continuing to work on our larger projects on the north end of town, and the Mill District has been keeping us busy. That's on the very south end of town as people are coming in. But that's all I have for Healdsburg. And let's see, are there any announcements as part of standing update from anybody? Okay, and then item 10 is public comments. Is there anybody from the public that would like to comment on any of the items 2 through 9? Okay, doesn't look like it. I don't think so either. All right, well, our next PAC meeting is December 19th. And anything else, Chris?
Yeah, maybe since we have 1 minute left, is there so will people be around for December 19th for a meeting, or should we look at rescheduling that? Any thoughts on that date right now?
December 19th.
Yeah. We can take care of that via email too. See if, maybe we can move it further, earlier in the month if there's gonna be a lot of folks out of town.
Yeah, either way, I'm around.
I'll be here.
I'll be here. Okay. We just do it and have the Zoom option too. Yeah.
And maybe there's enough people to approve a bunch of minutes.
I know, right?
Yes, that would be nice.
We brought snacks or treats for that December meeting in the past, so we could probably make that happen too.
Encourage more
A
people to
little
show
bit, a
up.
little
Yeah.
bit.
Okay, adjourn. All right. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Yeah. So